Let's talk about the new treatments for sleep apnea in 2024. Now, obviously, I realize I just put an expiration date on this video, but that's what I have to do to make sure I'm always providing the best and most up-to-date recommendations. Not even recommendations, but really giving you an overview, because if you're even watching this video, either you have some academic interest, maybe you're my mom, or you're someone who's struggling with sleep apnea, snoring at night as well, and you're just doggone tired and just in a place where you want some more options. Because when most people have a problem, they're looking for new options. Okay, so I want to be able to go over what some of those are and also give you a good historical context. Okay, because despite the fact I look like I'm 17, some say I do, but I guess that's a compliment. When you're able to know like the history of something, right? So, for instance, been in health and wellness quite some time. I'm also quite a bit of a historian, and I'm able to look back to the history of what people are searching for online. Health moves in cycles, just like the economy moves in cycles, just like weather patterns can move in cycles, just like uh, political thoughts can move in cycles. Everything's in this cycle. Okay, so what was new this year was also new in like 1984. Okay, and it went through a 40-year period. And I may be laughing, but actually, that's pretty accurate to what we are going to discuss. Okay, because if you search this on Google, the very first thing you'll get is Inspire therapy, brand new. Zeus came down from Mount Olympus and decided this is what we're doing for sleep apnea. It's new, it's great, it's awesome. Or maybe how Ozempic is being repurposed for sleep apnea. Yes, those are things we'll talk about in a little bit, but I want to give you some context, if you will, because then you'll be able to make better insights. All right, so here we go. Let us create a timeline, right? So if we go all the way back to the first person who snored, right? And his name was, no one knows the first person who snored. So if you really thought that was going to be a discussion point, we need to have a separate discussion. So let's just make this now, or I'll just put 24. Okay, 2024. And I'm going to make this over here 1953. Now, people had sleep apnea before this, and it was called many things, which ranged from, and I'm just giving you the historical context. It used to be called being a glutton and being lazy. It's a good medical diagnosis. And then evolved more commonly or properly into something known as Pickwickian syndrome, which is based off a character in a Charles Dickens novel that was just a very overweight guy who was really super tired all the time because he wasn't sleeping well. And he would just sit there and snore. Now, as time went on and medicine went through some changes, like recognizing hand washing is a good idea, which took about 150 years to recognize. So if things are slow, just keep it in context. Uh, and we started to really pick up, oh, I think this sleep apnea, or not, they even call it sleep apnea, I think this snoring at night is a problem. And when they started to pick it up, it was first characterized in the early 1900s as this problem of someone would be having the following breathing pattern at night. It would be more labored, more fast breathing. There's me doing that. If you want to embarrass me, you can take that snippet and just do it on replay as like a TikTok or something. But then they noticed they would do that pattern and then they would kind of like that. Okay. Very pleasant sounding. I know. Things I do for your education. But they noticed this sort of like pause in breathing and a gasping. Okay. And they start to figure out, okay, well, what the heck is going on here? And a more formal investigation was done in 1953. I don't have this paper pulled up for us, but you can look it up. 1953. Guy's last name is Pelletier, Pelletier, University of Minnesota. And he was able to experimentally induce this breathing pattern by hyperventilating willing, I hope they were willing, study participants, and then this actually led to this apnea happening. Apnea, all that means is a pause in breathing. Okay, deep sea divers, they talk about apneas all the time. Okay, static apnea is what they would be discussing when you're holding still, you're static, and you're being apneic. Okay, sleep apnea is apneas during sleep. Mind blowing, right? So started to pick up on this in 1953, and then this is gonna be my big challenge here, and I'm not really good at graphically telling what would be in the middle here. So let's just do it together. So this is 24 years. This is 47. What would the math be on that? Uh, 71 years. So in the middle. Wow, that actually worked out pretty well. So let's just say this is, let's go here. Okay, there's a reason we're doing this. Anybody want to guess? Whether you're guessing by yourself in the car, whether you're guessing in the comments, why am I taking the time to point out 1980? You want to guess what happened in this year? Okay, that's enough time. The CPAP was invented. This is when the CPAP was invented. Was it super widespread in 1980? No, it took some time to gain momentum. 1981 was when it was more widespread, but 1980, Colin Sullivan, inventor of the CPAP, this is when it came into existence. And you got to ask yourself, what the heck happened here? All right? And I know we're going on a long historical tangent, but this is important to know in terms of when we're talking about new treatments and what you should and should not be doing. So stick with me, okay? So in this period, they tried many things, okay? They tried drugs like pharmaceuticals to reduce the fast breathing at night. Because to medical people at that time, the fast breathing was like they kind of thought of it like asthma in a way. Like, oh man, fast breathing is a problem. So they tried to slow it down, but then that ended up killing people because if you slow someone's breathing down too much at sleep, they'll stop breathing and die. Not good. So scratch that off the list of what we're going to be doing. Um, the history of medicine has many casualties. Uh, Never fortunate. And from here, then it was kind of a dark age, if you will. And actually, before the CPAP, they would do surgery, and specifically a tracheotomy. Here's your throat, okay, and let's just put a hole in it. That's what we can do. This was one of the primary things, okay? The other primary thing was lifestyle, okay, aka let's lose some weight. Now, this worked well. I'll just put W down. This worked well in the Pickwickian syndrome because they were only really noticing this condition in people who were very overweight. Okay, most people are overweight with sleep apnea. Okay, just like most people without sleep apnea are overweight. Many people are normal weight. They still have this problem. Okay, but nonetheless, it was pretty much surgery or lifestyle. And then entered the golden age of the CPAP, all the way from down under. Sorry, just subjected you to my Australian accent, but the CPAP ResMed from Australia. If you're from Australia and offended, let me know. And then this has pretty much been the thing. Okay, CPAP, yes, there's been variations, BiPAP, APAP, etc. There's been other surgical developments, but really there hasn't been much in the way until 2024. Because in 2024, there has been a new invention, the Inspire. It's so new, it's so fresh, it's so inspiring, and I hope you're starting to detect my sarcasm over this. Because the Inspire, which I know is literally marketed as, is this my tab with it? No, it's not. I don't even have it. I don't have that tab up. It's marketed as like, this is the new thing, right? But here's the God's honest truth. If I pull up the origin, okay, this paper here, let me show you the paper. Origin and implementation of upper airway stimulation therapy for obstructive sleep apnea. Okay, upper airway stimulation, or UAS, is fundamentally what Inspire is. Okay, note the date on this paper, 2016. So I know Inspire is touted as like, oh, this is a brand new thing. It's awesome and it's amazing. Well, how's a paper from 2016 talking about it, right? But also, if we find when it was kind of first started to be invented and developed, it was around this time, 88. So really, this upper airway stimulation, it's not really new. Despite what the marketing may say, it's not really new at all. Sorry to pop anyone's bubble on that. And I understand most people want like new things because it gives you new hope, but it's really just a new spin on an old thing. And really not even a new spin, it's just a cool name. Here's a remote, here's a button. And the fact of the matter is, it's not really a new treatment. It's just not. It's an old thing remarketed to be new. Okay? And the thing is, with Inspire, you'll see a lot of great studies, this and that, but Inspire, as simple as it may be with a remote, right? Like, here's your remote, do Inspire. And I hope the Inspire people don't like come after me with this. But the fact of the matter is, when we look at, and this is again just to give you some data here, you want to look up the paper, that's cool. Look at the how many people are using this thing. And again, we'll put this data into context. Inspire is something where you go get surgery and then you get some updates or surgical revisions, and then you got to make sure the thing in your chest is connected to the wire in your throat into your tongue, and all of that, nice and simple, right? Now when we look at it ultimately, because to use this thing, I don't think I have, oh, here's a high-tech timer. Now this is not new from 2024, but you press this thing, you press the remote, and it should stimulate your upper airway muscles so that they work for you, right? And yet, again, a thing where you just have to press a button. Okay, the good use. Okay, we add in these top two categories, 34% plus 23%. I only ask the hard questions. Survey says, I believe that's 57%. That's how many people adhere to this at a high level, because otherwise people are missing days. They're turning it on later in the night. They turn it off early, or they just like don't use it. Okay, I know this literally says 85% are excellent or good users, but again, so just randomly picking what's excellent versus good, that's always going to be up to the researcher. I'm not bashing that. I'm just saying we need to be able to qualify and understand when it says good use, okay, is like on and off days. Okay, so let's put this in context. If you go off your diet, let's say you're trying to lose weight, you go off your diet, you eat too much, you eat the wrong foods, etc. You do that 3 out of 7 days a week. Is that a good adherence pattern? No, not. Okay? Now, we have to ask ourselves why this is. Because again, if it's as simple as here's your remote, press the thing, maybe hook it up to your phone, maybe an additional layer of complexity there. If it's as simple as that, why is the compliance rate relatively low? Okay? Everyone has a compliance rate of 100% of checking your cell phone every single day. Maybe it's not 100%, but it's pretty close to that. And the reason for this, because I talked to a lot of people in the sleep apnea sphere, if you will, and a lot of surgeons are hesitant about giving Inspire because one, it's a putting a device into you. Like if I surgically implanted this into my chest, that's not like a simple thing, okay? It's not. A lot can go wrong. But also, when talking to their patients who have gotten this, and again, surgeons are going to do what they feel is best for their patients most of the time, right? The reason for the non-compliance is because, and again, this is just from what I hear. Yes, it's reflected in some of the research here, but usually they don't like to publish negative things. But the main non-compliance is because of the discomfort of use, not from, well, it is kind of literally written right here. But the thing is, when it electrostimulates you, That does not feel good. Okay. Yes, you could argue, oh, it needs to be adjusted, etc. But if 43% of people are taking days off, they're starting it late, they're turning it off early, it's because of this discomfort. Okay? Because you're literally electrostimulating the muscles in your airway. All right, that's why I want to focus in on this graph next. Because when we think about the historical context here, because again, Inspire, it ain't new. All right. And neither is, Ozempic, okay, or however else you want to pronounce it, Terapide. I know I just butchered it. You don't need to let me know that. But the thing is, this is really right back to where we were, right? Drug for weight loss, okay? Something that try to keep your airway open, just with electroshocking, okay? That started in 1988 and just took some more time to develop and become a more, commercialized thing. It's not new, folks. It's not, all right? But these ideas of what leads to apneas and hypopnea, which is just breathing less, it's still these four major factors. What's going on with your anatomy? What's going on with your breathing? What's going on with your muscles? And what's going on with your sleep? These are the four major things. All right. And all this does is focus on this aspect, also anatomy a little bit of crosstalk, because if your muscles flop into your airway, then that's not good. But the thing is, it doesn't address these two: loop gain, which is how you breathe, and also your sleep quality, okay, your arousal threshold. Because if you have, say, insomnia as a comorbidity, or you wake up with sleep apnea, but it's not, you just don't know why, or you have poor sleep quality nonetheless, that is a bad arousal threshold, right? You have bad sleep quality. That's what this means. Working on these two, loop gain, sleep, and also the muscle activation, this is something I see in my clients time and time again. This is able to make up for anatomy. Okay, these three factors. Because if you really only focus on one, okay, well, I mean, you could focus on loop gain specifically and be fine. But if you only focus on one, you're not going to get the most improvements here. Okay, so again, there's not really, because like this model of sleep apnea, this is old. I don't have claim to substantiate that. I could just go back in papers in the 80s and the 70s and show you that. Don't have those pulled up for us currently. My apologies. But this is the working model, and this is what we work on as well. So that's why when we're thinking about like new therapies, new treatments, there's things that are very well proven to help substantially already that don't require surgery, whether that's to change your anatomy or to change your muscular activation. Let's talk about those, shall we? Because the thing is, when I like again kind of put myself in your shoes, like literally, this is what I do. I'm like, well, what are they looking for? It's not car insurance, although this is not a car insurance ad. But when you look up like new treatment for sleep apnea, here's the number one video, and literally the caption will say, less invasive, all right? And then like halfway through the video, we're talking about surgery, and that makes me feel like, okay, like am I going crazy here? Like, how is this less invasive? All right, and it's comparing it to a CPAP. That's why I want to give you like an overview of kind of where my head's at with a lot of these. Because again, even if it's new or remarketed in 2024, it's still going back to those original frameworks of how can we surgically manipulate the problem and how can we just reduce weight to, again, just relieve some of the anatomy. So I think a newer way of thinking about it would be a lot beneficial. So let's talk about that. Okay, because fundamentally, when we're thinking about sleep apnea, boom. This is, I'll just kind of draw it all out here for you first. And this is a head with a mouth. That's supposed to be a chin. And there you go. And you have a tongue muscle here, reaches back. All right, we'll just have the tongue kind of back in here. Make it a little bit bigger. And then you have this back wall of your airway. Sleep apnea, fundamentally, no matter what's going on in your nose, in your mouth, adenoids, tonsils, what happens is that you have a narrow airway, number one. Then you also have a faster breathing pattern. That's what that loop gain is, on stable ventilation, faster breathing, on steady. And then this will lead to a pulling together of the tongue and the rear wall of your airway. Okay, this will come together. The tongue will move more, typically. Okay, this is what goes on. So this is the new way of thinking about it. How can you prevent this from happening? The back of the tongue and the rear wall of your airway. That should be the new way you should be thinking about this. Luckily, this is not, this is a completely different line of thinking about it that I prefer. So one is going to be myofunctional therapy. Okay. We don't need to try to mispronounce things because I will. And essentially, you can think of this. These are exercises to make sure the tongue stays forward and the back wall of the airway stays back. Okay, so instead of being kind of like this, close, boom, kind of keep it further away. Okay, because then they're less likely to allow a faster inhale to bring it back down, right? So that's why myofunctional therapy or oropharyngeal exercises are going to be really good. Now, the other facet of this, because again, so myofunctional exercises, this will go into this category. The next one would be loop gain, the breathing. Okay, that's why when we look at, let me pull this up here. So whether it's this article and the proper English way to spell apnea, there are a lot of great studies that show whether it is certain breathing methods, respiratory, let me see this one here, where you're able to see that there are good improvements in people just using this, the breathing retraining. Because when you're able to have a slower breath, then you're not pulling the back of the tongue into the airway. Okay. And that's a new way you want to think about thinking about this. Okay. Because, 2024, that's relatively new. And then what's this one? Is it 2020, 2024? This is something that, like, they didn't really think about back then. Not sure why. Can't really find any things. Maybe there is a hidden ancient book that I'm not aware of, but it wasn't really on the thoughts and minds of people back in those days of what are some other ways we can retrain our breathing pattern and retrain the muscles in our airways. Because there's a big fundamental flawed thought. What I do during the day means nothing for my body at night. Because how can I control my sleep? Because I'm sleeping like this. All over the place. And again, if you want to embarrass me, that would be a great video snippet to use. But the fact is, how our muscles are functioning during the day, our tongue, the back of the airway, carries over into the night. Because if you got floppy tongue, floppy back of airway during the day, it's going to be the same thing at night. If you have a more firm, a more toned, a more activated oropharyngeal muscles, like your tongue in the back of the airway, that will carry over into night in a good way. If you're breathing a little bit fast during the day, you're breathing fast at night, that carries over. But if you're able to train or retrain your breathing to a natural, slower, steady breathing, then that carries over into the night. Okay? Now, the third pillar of this is the sleep or the arousal threshold. Basically, how deep is your sleep quality? So the more you're able to do for that, right? Whether it's having a good sleep environment, having a good wind down routine, the more you can improve sleep quality, just sleep quality by itself. Okay, so for instance, again, I don't have this study pulled up here, but one of my favorite studies done in, I think it was in China or South Korea, but they had people with sleep apnea do Qigong to see if that would impact their sleep at night. Why not? Let's just kind of go to the park, move our hands around very slowly. I think Qigong is great. But why would that make any sense? You don't see on this chart like missing, chi mismanagement, do you? I don't. But the thing is, if you do something like Qigong that lowers your stress levels, that improves your sleep quality, it is actually going to improve how your body is able to reduce apnea episodes at night just by improving sleep quality. So I want to give you a new way. I know you looked for like, oh, new treatments. What's the silver bullet here? Okay. Most people think that, myself included, when I was going through this. But the fact of the matter is, the more of a multifaceted approach you're able to have that puts you in control the more success you're going to have. Because when you're able to do something, whether it's breathing exercises, oral muscle activation exercises, doing things to improve your sleep quality, changing your diet, changing your stress management, the more you have ways to win, you are not dependent on a surgical device remote. You are not dependent on a CPAP. You still may need to use one for the time being, don't get me wrong, but over time, you have more tools in your toolbox to whether it's reducing your pressure under your uh, licensed healthcare provider's guidance or being able to have that conversation with them like, hey, I'm feeling great. My machine's saying my AHI is super low all the time consistently. What do you think about lowering the pressure or coming off? That's what happens when you have more tools in your toolkit. So I know you came here for new treatment, but I'm giving you a new thought of being able to have a new way to think about sleep apnea so you can be able to have new progress. Because the old way of just like, oh, there's one thing that's going to fix it, it leads you just from going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next. And maybe some of them work for some people, that's great. But for a lot of people, it leaves them in the dust and they're searching for that next silver bullet and they feel like they're just walking through a desert in search of an oasis. But the thing is, again, when you have more tools available to target this issue, you're able to have a higher level of success that you're able to drive. Because guess what? I bet you if Inspired worked wonderfully for every single person, they will be willing to put up with the electrostimulation. They just would. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, if you do something, it may be challenging at first, but give yourself the time and grace to see the improvements and be able to measure it over time and have the right guidance so you regain that motivation. You put the power back in your hands against a disease and condition that, most people just say, hey, CPAP or, good luck. So that's the encouragement I want to be able to give you today. There's a lot of different ways to approach this. Now, the one major issue is we don't know the best ways to approach it for you specifically, because that's a lot of, it is a lot of trial and error. It took me 2 years of trial and error to figure out for myself. And then over time, developing up to, in the first few weeks we're working with someone, we may have a great idea from the get-go. And then how their body responds and evolves, that tells us even further what we need to focus in on. It's a very dynamic thing. But we can only firmly know what to do if we know more about, like, hey, what's going on with people's issues. And that's why we offer our free evaluation sessions. All right. And that's where we're talking, not long, 45 minutes of where we're saying, hey, what are the major issues that you're experiencing? What are your goals? Is it to sleep without a mouth guard, sleep without a CPAP, reduce the use of it, go from APAP to, lower the pressure there, whatever that goal is for you, or it could just be to regain the energy to exercise. That's what we want to set our sights on, because obviously different goals are going to have different ways of getting there. Okay. And then once we're really clear on that, we're deciding, hey, what are the steps to help you do so? And if we can help, we'll walk you through those steps. But if not, we will steer you, refer you to whatever is going to serve you, your needs, your lifestyle the best. So for that, just go to ochnow.com/talk. Okay, and once you go here, then it'll take you to this page, and you're in the right place because you'll see me there, and then you just click start, fill this out, super easy, super simple, and then you just pick your time and day. So go to ochnow.com/talk, and we'll talk soon. So thanks so much for watching, and take care.